Last night against the Philadelphia 76ers, the Raptors suffered another bitterly disappointing loss as they fell 100-93 despite leading by sizable margins multiple times throughout the game. So, Raptors fans like myself were left asking, who is going to get it done for the Raptors when the going gets tough in the clutch in the fourth quarter? Let's get into it. Welcome to the Raptors Roundup on Amateur Hour Sports. This is the segment on the channel where we go through the game from the night before that the Raptors featured in. We give you a brief overview of the game, we give you a synopsis of the events that occurred in the game, and then we give you the takeaways that we can take from the game and move forward with into the future. If it is your first time here with me today, you like what you see, want more of myself talking about the Toronto Raptors in videos just like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, show your support to the channel, join the movement of the channel. Thank you so much everybody for the big support coming in this week. Last video did really well. Thank you so much everybody who did click on that video, who enjoyed the video, who watched the video, and all that good stuff. So let's move right into the Raptors roundup for the game against the Philadelphia 76ers. It's getting really tough to watch this Raptors team play because not the sense that they're not playing well or it's ugly basketball. I mean, in some cases it is ugly basketball, but it's so frustrating to watch this game. Like, there's no other way to describe the Raptors because they can have a game where they play better than the other team for 80% of the game, but in that little 20% pocket where they're getting outplayed, they get really outplayed to the point where they can lose the game even though they played better for 80% of it. And I think that this game more or less fits that bill because the Raptors, throughout the course of the game, were the better team. They were up by sizable margins at multiple points throughout the game, yet still they find a way to lose, and they find a way to shut down in the fourth quarter and let Philly take over and win the game pretty easily, pretty comfortably in the end. So let's go ahead and get into the synopsis of the game, starting with the first quarter. Of course, I thought that the offense looked in flow again. We start games pretty well. I thought that all three games so far we have started pretty well. The first quarter kind of masked what was to become as the Raptors fall to 0-3 on the season. So again, back to the first quarter, we were disrupting the Philly offense from doing what they really wanted to do. I thought that initially Baines was playing good defense on Embiid and OG Anunoby was doing quite well on Ben Simmons. Len was getting minutes and playing pretty well. Like, this was the perfect game for Alex Len to get his minutes in. A very big, tall Philly team with Joel Embiid, with Dwight Howard on their roster. It was necessary for Alex Len to play this game. Fred VanVleet continued to struggle in this game, was not really making his shots, but Nick Nurse was changing up the rotations big time. I mean, Stanley Johnson getting serviceable minutes for the Raptors. I don't think we have ever seen that in a game that wasn't winding down the regular season. It didn't really matter as much. We closed the quarter really well. Kyle Lowry hits a big three. OG Anunoby hits a big three. And, the Raptors are looking quite good after the first quarter. We get to the second quarter where we see more of the defensive guys. And, the defense still doing quite well. I like Stanley Johnson for what he brings on defense. His offense, his hands were pretty much lacking throughout the entire game other than that ridiculous dunk off of a missed free throw. But still, decent on defense because of his movement. I thought that this was a game where we really needed to see Chris Boucher play at the power forward. I don't know why Nick Nurse is scared to use two bigs on the floor at the same time. Like, you could easily play Boucher at the power forward, Len at the 5, or Baines at the 5. I think that would work really well, and I keep vouching for that to happen. Philly wasn't hitting any of their threes, and it looked like the Toronto Raptors were the better team in the game. It looked like the Toronto Raptors were going to take over this game. They were up 35-21, but I was left asking myself again, in this exact moment, I know it's easy to say in hindsight now, but in that exact moment, up 35-21, I remember I wrote it down, like, we've been here in all three games with a very healthy lead, but can we sustain this throughout the game? And, well, you know the answer to that question. The Raptors went cold for a big stretch in classic fashion this season, and Joel Embiid was getting those little chintzy superstar calls where they were just sending him to the line. They were sending Joel Embiid to the line, and in fact, at halftime, Joel Embiid had 11 free throw attempts, and the Raptors' entire team had 6 free throw attempts. So Philly were getting their calls down low, and Embiid was getting his calls all game. Because of our big cold stretch where Philly go on a 15-3 run, all of a sudden that 35-21 lead, it's gone, and it is a close game again. We were lucky to escape the first half with a very good closeout orchestrated by Kyle Lowry, who drew a foul, hit a big three, and put the Raptors in the locker room up 8. I believe it was 56-48 at halftime. And at this point, I'm thinking the Raptors, okay, playing better all throughout the game, just keep doing what you're doing, and we can run through and comfortably win this game. Once the third quarter started, OG Anunoby came alive, finally started hitting shots. Kyle Lowry was hitting shots. Siakam was hitting shots to a degree. Everything looked very good. And then we hit our classic. We've done this every game. 5-minute cold spell where we do not put up a basket. In all 3 games this season, the Raptors have had a 5-minute stretch in which they could not hit a basket. And to be honest, that has been their reason for losing all 3 games pretty much. Norman Powell, who was awful throughout the game, and Pascal Siakam both gave away bad turnovers, which ultimately led to Philly getting hot and starting a 13-0 run to end off the third quarter and tie up the game heading into the fourth quarter. Norman Powell, I don't know what is going on with him. He only had 6 points yesterday, and he's getting looks. He is getting plays run for him, but he is not knocking down his shots. And Norman Powell has completely lost his touch at the rim. And when Norman Powell is not hitting shots, not making plays, getting points, his mistakes are very glaring. Like the turnover in the third quarter, like in the second quarter when the ball was running out for a Philly backcourt violation, and Norman Powell saves the ball from going out and turns the ball over himself. It would have been Raptors' ball. And Norman Powell gave them a fresh new shot clock. Like, Norman Powell needs to sort of stuff out. Even after getting called out by Nick Nurse after the Spurs game, still didn't quite get it because he hit 2 shots early, and that was it for the rest of the game. What is going on with our third quarters? Like, how can you go 5 minutes without a single point, giving Philly a 13-0 run? How are you expected to win a basketball game when you produce this every single game? What is it about this team that just finds that cold spell and can't get out of it? Are just the big hitters, the big guys in the team, the big players like Siakam and Van Vliet unable to pull us out of this mess, to get us a bucket? Because that's what it seemed like in this game. We get into the fourth quarter where allowing rebounds in our own defensive end has killed us in the fourth quarter. Those second chance points have absolutely killed us, and kind of happened again in this game. I was screaming for Baines and Boucher to get minutes together because of this aspect, because we were allowing a ton of rebounds, but we never saw it at any point throughout the game. Baines on the floor with another big, or Len on the floor with another big in Boucher. We never saw 2 bigs on the floor at the same time. Fred was really struggling. In fact, didn't even register a fourth quarter point, and the refs were really making it difficult for the Raptors to win. I mean, besides, the Aaron Baines call on the shot clock violation where it was just hitting his fingertip, like, obviously that's a black and white rule and the Raptors have to eat that, but a lot of calls were going Philly's way, and it happened throughout the game. A lot of out-of-bounds calls, like Tobias Harris had one where he had his hands over his head and knocked it off the bottom of the backboard, and they still called it Philly ball. There was another situation where Stanley Johnson knocked it off of Ben Simmons' thigh, like clearly knocked it off Ben Simmons' thigh, and the refs still called it Philly ball. Like, it happened consistently throughout the game. And then nothing was going right for the Raptors. I mean, Baines hits that big 3, gets called back 2 minutes later for a shot clock violation. Pascal Siakam gets a very marginal turnover that goes out of bounds. It was the right call in the end, but bats off Pascal Siakam, gives Philly another chance. We turn the ball over sloppily, like a lot of bad turnovers in this quarter, and a ton of fouls. We're giving away so many fouls. I mean, Pascal Siakam gave away 5 personal fouls in, I think, the last 7 minutes of the game. 5 fouls in the space of 7 minutes for Pascal Siakam, who only managed to get 2 points in the entire fourth quarter. This is probably what I'm most angry about. Pascal Siakam, after really causing a lot of detriment to the Raptors for the way he played, only 2 points, 5 fouls, was 30 seconds left in the game, gets subbed out, and walks off the court completely. Now, this is probably what I'm most angry about, because this is supposed to be one of the leaders on the team, the best player on the team, who just put out a performance where he had over double the amount of fouls in the clutch than he did points, yet walks off the floor and refuses to even watch the last little bit of the game, where the Raptors had at least a little bit of hope in getting back in the game. It wasn't completely over, it wasn't a blowout, and Pascal Siakam walks off the court to go to the locker room. I cannot believe that. It makes me want to throw up when I hear or see something like that happen with a team who's supposed to be such closely knit in terms of their chemistry. Cannot have that happen ever again. So once again, the story of the game is the big hitters, the big guys, the big players miss opportunities in the clutch to get us in the game, because for the last 5 minutes of the third quarter, we were ice cold, didn't even get a single point. And for the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, I think we managed 2 points maybe off a Kyle Lowry layup. That was it. And obviously, when you don't score in the clutch and Philly get even anything, especially when you leave Seth Curry wide open at the top of the three-point line, he's going to knock it down. The Raptors lose this game, and it was so frustrating again because they played so well for most of the game, but let it fall apart in those small moments. We only managed 37 points as a total in the second half. How are you going to win a game of basketball like that? So let's get into my 3 takeaways for the game. The first takeaway, not the entire scapegoat, but the refs really made it easy for Philadelphia in this game. A lot of things were going Philly's way. Joel Embiid was getting his calls, getting the superstar calls. 16 free throw attempts for Joel Embiid. The Raptors as a whole only attempted 14. And I think a lot of that is on the refs. A lot of it is on Pascal Siakam for never, ever going into contact with Ben Simmons. I mean, Siakam hit some decent mid-range jumpers over Simmons, but that was it. Pascal Siakam was never getting points in the paint because he refused to go at Simmons' draw fouls. He always tries to go around the contact at the rim, making it a tough shot, making him miss, instead of going right into contact, drawing a foul, getting to the line, picking up points. Very annoying that he doesn't do that. He really needs to figure that out. Second takeaway is, everybody knows this. Nobody takes over in the clutch. Do I need to reiterate the points in the clutch? Fred VanVleet, 0 fourth quarter points. Pascal Siakam, 2 fourth quarter points. OG Anunoby, 0 points in the fourth quarter. Norman Powell, 0 points in the fourth quarter. Only guy actually trying to help us out, Kyle Lowry with 9 points in the fourth quarter. But why is a almost 35-year-old Kyle Lowry having to be the best player? Why can't somebody else help him out in that regard? And the third takeaway, the Raptors falter in the second half. Only 37 second half points. Who is going to get it done? The Raptors shooting splits are absolutely abysmal in the second half compared to the first half. They average 45% from the field in the first throughout these first 3 games, 37% shooting from the field in the second half. Whereas their opposition, who shoots 41% in the first half, improves to 52% in the second half. So not only do we slow down on offense, we slow down on defense as well, letting other teams back into the game. So the Raptors, they lose in frustrating fashion. This was a game they were all over. I really don't know how they didn't win this game, but the Raptors need to find somebody who is going to be able to get the shots down in the clutch, because it can't be 34-year-old Kyle Lowry always doing it. Siakam needs to step up. Fred VanVleet needs to step up. Norman Powell needs to step up. Those 3 guys have just simply not been good enough in fourth quarters. And Fred VanVleet has a second game of the season where he gets, I believe, under 10 points. I think he also did that in the Pelicans game. And after signing him to that big contract, he needs to step up and be a bigger contributor for this team. So 0-3, do we panic now? I asked if we should panic after the Spurs game, where I said no. A lot of time left, and I'm going to stick to that because Philly's a good team. Obviously, the Raptors should have won this game, but the Philly is a good team. They hit their shots. They took advantage of the cold spells for the Raptors. They played decent defense, and Embiid hit his free throws when he got them and also put up a ton of points regardless. The Raptors, 0-3, they play the New York Knicks next. Oh my God. Thank goodness that we get the New York Knicks next. If we lose to the Knicks, panic mode for me. I start to worry because where is the win going to come from if you don't even beat the Knicks? So the Raptors play the New York Knicks on New Year's Eve. That is the game they need to win to break them out of this slump. They just need a win to get going, I think. It's still early goings. There's still 69 games left in the season. Obviously, this is not ideal, but I feel like the Raptors, those are 3 winnable games. The way they played in all 3 of those games, they had sizable leads in all 3 of those games. They just need to close games better. They need big players to show up when the going gets tough, when we're on a bad run late in the fourth quarter, the big guys, the big players need to show up, and they just simply have not been doing that. If that changes, this Raptors team is going to be fine. But big if on if that changes, because who is going to do it? It doesn't look like anybody on this team is prepared to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and take over in the clutch. Don't panic yet, but the New York Knicks must-win game. Must-win game. So another really long video, a lot of thoughts on my mind for this game. It's been so frustrating watching this team, but that's all I have to say. Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions on this game in the comments down below, but thank you so much for watching. If you are still here, please like the video if you like, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this. Hopefully for the next Raptors Roundup, we get a win to talk about against the Knicks, but we need to have our guys show up in the clutch. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.